I think it was back in 2012 that a very well-known firearms instructor said something rather controversial. He said, all guns should be Glocks, all Glocks should be 9mm, and all Glock 9mm should be Glock 19. Something along those lines. That ruffled a lot of feathers. A lot of people got pissed. And that man was James Joerger. Yeah, rather controversial figure in the firearms community back in the day. Not for me. I always understood he was a guy that had a way with words and expressing himself, and he had his strong opinions. I remember that he was the guy that sent me an email saying, you know what, I like your content. If you're ever around here, come train with us. It's on me. I don't get many of those emails. I have a couple, not many. In terms of someone that is very well known in the firearms community, someone that has a big channel or is recognized around the world, asking you, hey, you know what? You're invited. Doesn't happen all the time. So I really appreciated that from him, and I told him that. That was nice. He unfortunately passed a few years ago. He had this, just one of these awful diseases, degenerative nervous system disease. With his last days, he decided to go and train fighters in Ukraine. And I think there's still the videos up of him doing that and going over there. This was back in the day in which a generation of Americans remember where they stood in terms of, do you stand with the Soviet Union or not? Apparently those days are gone now, and I guess it's about age as well. I guess if you're over 40, there's a good chance you remember that Soviet communism is not good. Maybe not anymore, I don't know. We're living in interesting times. But going back to the topic of firearms, he said something that pissed a lot of people. I wasn't pissed. I'm not easily pissed. But I think back in those days, I was still packing a Glock 31. Basically the same thing, but in 357 SIG. And I'm still a huge 357 SIG advocate. Will I tell anyone to buy a Glock 31? No. Why not? Because he was right. You don't need anything more than this. This is 17 rounds on the table. 17 rounds of 9mm that you can put in this pistol. Do you think you need a lot more than that? Well, sorry, buddy. You don't know enough about this. The simple answer is that with this round, yeah, even in Full Metal Jacket, it's all about shot placement. There's so much information out there, and there's so much research you can do. There's years of reading and learning and shooting yourself and practicing and finding what works best. But at the end of the day, if you put one of these things where it matters, nothing else matters, right? That's basically it. If you put one of these rounds where it makes a difference, nothing else matters. Now, if you want to talk about guns, sure, you have a number of them out in the market, and that's great. That's nice to have options. This is, though, the most trusted, most proven pistol the world has ever seen, as of right now. It was back in the day, that was maybe the FN High Power, extremely popular gun, extremely reliable gun, maybe one of the most proven, most issued guns in the world. Colt 1911 wasn't all that far from that back in the day. Still very much loved by a lot of people. But as time goes by, there's new things that come out there, and not all things are equal. And some things have more presence and are used more and are tested more and reach a level that all of the other things simply don't have. They haven't been there. They haven't been there, and they haven't done that. So they don't have that status. This does. This is as good as it gets in terms of reliability proven over the years in a number of holsters from military and police all over the world. So yeah, Glock, going Glock. That's a simple, and go with 9mm. As much as I love 357 SIG, it is expensive. It is the idea with 357 SIG was to put this in this, right? How do I get 357 Magnum stopping power into a Glock pistol? Well, I use a 40 Smith & Wesson case, which is going to be about this big, and I just narrow it down to 9mm, and then that's how I get my 357 Magnum in a pistol. 15 rounds plus one in a Glock. That's awesome, right? Who could not like that? Well, certainly not me. I'm a big 357 SIG fanboy. I've been so for years. And even back in the day when it was extremely expensive to shoot that gun, and I would go around it by having a Glock in 40, so I should have 40 as well, and the 357 SIG barrel, and you would have the different barrels, and you would shoot with one and carry the other, and all of that is all great. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at something that simply gets the job done, this is it. There's not going to be a difference between a round in the right place being 9mm and 357 SIG. There is going to be more power, more velocity, more temporal cavity creation, right? There's going to be more penetration. There's going to be a number of things. But with premium ammunition, if you buy the same ammo, like you get in your jacket hollow points, whatever is the best ammo these days that you have out there, you get that in 9mm versus 357 SIG. The difference in terms of how effective it is in putting down a guy, it's just negligible. There's no point in bothering with that if what you want is practical results. Now, if you want to have a very cool round that is super reliable, the bottle shape case just feeds better, but how many problems have you had with 9mm in a Glock, honestly? I mean, I've said these things in a number of videos. The bottle-shaped case, the greater velocity and energy, how accurate it is, and it is tremendously accurate. Now, it's accurate for people that are trying to squeeze a maximum amount of accuracy in a pistol. Again, for all practical purposes, you're not going to see a big difference between one and the other. And I get it, if you're shooting at 25 meters and you want to have, yeah, but really, this is more than accurate enough as it is. Any of these things that we're looking at and talking about are far more accurate than the human error level that the enormous majority of people have. Now, if you ask me, and I'm an average shooter, I shoot more accurately with 357 SIG. How much more? Well, maybe a little bit more at certain distance, under certain conditions, but really, for anything practical, there's not going to be a difference. For anything practical, in those moments when you need to defend yourself, it is between grouping this and grouping like this, honestly, is it worth the extra cost of ammunition? Is it worth losing 2 rounds in your 17? Really, that's not much of a big deal. How many rounds do you need? Are you fine with 15? Sure. Are you okay with 17? Of course. Are you fine with 7 plus 1 in your 1911? Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have 15 rounds if I can have a double stack magazine, but we go back to this. You can have that in your 357 SIG, a lot of ammunition there. But we go back to this, why? Why do you want to do it? Because I simply want to have a 357 SIG, I simply want to have a 45 ACP, I simply want to have a 10mm Magnum because of bear. You know what kills bear? 9mm. You know what killed a bear from an Alaskan guide, an Alaskan fishing guide? He went, I might as well go with 9mm. And he did come across a bear, and he did shoot it, and it died. So if you need to shoot stuff, right, go with 9mm. And as James Joerger wisely said, go with that Glock 9mm. Now, he said he later adapted that to making all Glocks Glock 19. Honestly, I'd rather go with a 17. Why? Because for the size difference, I haven't noticed much of a difference, right? In terms of what, carrying it, in terms of, but so much more compact. A little bit, really not that much. And I have a little bit more barrel. I have a little bit more sight radius, which helps. Now, if you're going with a red dot, maybe not so much, but the extra metal is going to help you in controlling the gun when shooting. More metal here means less recoil because this needs to be moved when the gun fires, right? So it's going to be a longer barrel is usually easier to control with faster follow-up shots. I think this is the way to go. I think that if you want to go with a Glock 19, that's going to be perfectly fine too. And I think if you want to go with a SIG P320 and 9mm, I mean, do whatever. Or if you want to go with a 365 and 40 or whatever it is, that's going to be okay. But if you simply want to have something that has been extremely proven over the years, beyond any kind of possible contestation, the most reliable gun the world has ever seen in the most amount of holsters by law enforcement and military all over the world. And every time the military gets a chance at selecting what they want, they will still go with this. And in the round that has been proven time and again to do everything you need a handgun to do, there it is. Okay, guys, if you want to learn more about all of this stuff, you're more than welcome to subscribe to the channel, and I strongly recommend you get my book, Surviving the Economic Collapse, as well as street survival skills based on real first-hand experience of going through one of these things, an economic collapse, which is something very relevant given these days the economy, how it's going, and a lot of information, street survival skills as well, practical stuff, so as to be prepared for the world in which we're living and not fantasy. Okay, take care. See you next time.